Ethereum blockchain is going to deploy its last network upgrade of the year 2021 in less than 24 hours from now. It's exciting to follow the change that is being pushed to the Ethereum mainnet with Arrow Glacier. If you're interested to learn what Arrow Glacier brings to the user of the Ethereum network, continue watching. Welcome to another exciting episode of PEEPanEIP, an educational video series where we learn about an improvement proposal, upcoming upgrades, and the basics of Ethereum blockchain. I'm your host, Pooja Ranjan, and in today's episode, we are going to talk about EIP-4345, the difficulty bomb delay, with the co-author of the proposal, TJ Rush. EIP-4345 is a standard track core proposal that was originally proposed by Tim Bako on October 5th to initially push the difficulty bomb till May 2022. Only after some discussion in the all core dev meetings, mostly based on the calculation by our guest today, it was decided to push the ice age a little further. To learn more about the proposal and learn something new about the calculation of the difficulty bomb in the Ethereum blockchain, let's welcome TJ Rush. Thanks for joining us, TJ.
Great, thanks for having me. Very excited to be here, actually.
So am I. We are so excited to learn about EIP 4345. But before we get technical, we generally request our first-time guest to give an introduction, including the professional history and how you became the part of Ethereum ecosystem. I know you have got a pretty interesting backstory that many people can be getting inspiration from. So over to you.
Yeah, I'll tell a little bit different story than I told you yesterday. So back in 1978, I used to log into a university computer when I was 12, and it would take only 4 hours to calculate 2 raised to the power of 2. And we were so excited that it only took 2 hours to get our answer back. And ever since then, about every 10 years, I'm super excited about something in the computing field. So there was desktop computing in the 80s, World Wide Web in the 90s, not a whole lot in 2000s. And I kind of took a hiatus during the 2000s and became a writer and a poet. And then I became excited again in 2014, 2015 with Bitcoin, and then super excited with Ethereum. And I just felt that Ethereum was a paradigm shift, basically. And I was just excited to be involved. And I've been involved every day, full time, ever since I first encountered it, really. So very, very interesting change in the way we do things, I hope.
That's super interesting. It's really fascinating. And I'm sure many out there would have loved the transition from a computer scientist, a poet, and to an Ethereum researcher. I did it for sure.
Right.
Talking about research, I understand the article Adventure in Difficulty Bombing played a significant role in deciding how far the difficulty bomb should be pushed for the Arrow Glacier upgrade. So without further ado, let's peep in.
I'm just going to start. I'm going to just go through, I'll go rather quickly, but I wanted to use the math of the thing. Even though it's not complicated math, it really explains itself well when we look at the math. So this is saying that the difficulty of a current block, well, first of all, the difficulty is used to adjust the amount of time that blocks take to get found on the chain. And we want the blocks to appear every 14 seconds or every 13 seconds and be consistent in how often they appear. So the difficulty of the current block is dependent on the difficulty of the previous block. Hold on. It's dependent on the difficulty of the previous block plus a term plus another term. So this term I'm going to call adjustment, and I'll explain that in a minute. And this term I'm going to call the bomb. And what we're interested in is setting back the bomb so it doesn't overtake the whole calculation and slow the chain down. So just looking at this piece here, I'm going to just look at this piece for a second. And we can see that this has various parts. The first part is the time the timestamp of the current block minus the timestamp of the previous block. In other words, how many seconds the block took to appear. And what that does then is divide by 10 and take the floor of that number. And then it subtracts that number from 1, and you get this term inside of the adjustment. And here's a table of that data. So if what happens is, because of this divide by 10 and the floor, if the time in seconds for the block to appear is less than 10, this value of B is 0. Yeah. And the value of 1 minus 0 is 1. And if the time is between 10 and 20 seconds, you get a value of 1 and a value of 0. If it's more than 20 seconds, you get an increasingly large negative number. And what this is, it just calculates into a direction to send the difficulty calculation either up because it's too slow, you want it to go up, or it's just right, so you want it to leave it where it is, or it's too fast, in which case you want the, I might have that backwards. If the block is too slow, you want the difficulty to go up. My chart's backwards here, sorry, I just made this afternoon, but slow blocks want to be more difficult, and fast blocks
fast blocks should want to be more difficult. I think.
Yeah, exactly the opposite of what I just said. Slow blocks want to be faster, and fast blocks want to be slower, so you stay right at 14 seconds. So this number, this whole term right here, adjusts it either up or down depending on the previous block time. And then this piece right here can be called the direction of the adjustment. And you can then see that this piece is a small portion of the previous block difficulty. So what this is saying is that the current block is the previous block's difficulty plus a small portion of that difficulty added or subtracted from the previous difficulty to make it either go up or down. And I'm going to call this whole thing the adjustment. And if I hide the bomb for just a second, this is what Bitcoin has in its difficulty adjustment. It takes the previous block and it adjusts it so it stays at a constant time. And Bitcoin is 10 minutes every block. And without the bomb, Ethereum would be 13 seconds for every block for the rest of time, because the adjustment calculation works perfectly. And you can see that in this chart where the time, this is the number of blocks produced in a week, and you can see it's very flat, and it stays flat on purpose because that's exactly what it wants to do. And then when the bomb starts going off, then it starts tailing off the number of blocks produced per week. You can also see it in this chart where it stays very flat until the bomb starts going off. So the thing of interest in the difficulty calculation for Ethereum is the bomb. So let's focus on the bomb now for a second. And if you look at this calculation here, predicting when a block is going to occur is very, very simple, because you just have to add 14 seconds times the number of blocks and you know exactly when a block is going to happen. The trouble is that there's there's the bomb calculation. So let's look at the bomb. So can you see that? So I'm going to just ignore that -2 because all it does is offset the value by a constant factor. And I'm going to just look at, hold on one second. So this is the bomb calculation here, and it starts with the actual block number. And there's an offset which shifts the real block number into what we call the fake block number. And it's a simple subtraction. And then this takes the floor of that fake block number divided by 100,000 and creates a value called the period. So hold on one second. So the real block number less the offset is the fake block number. That divided by 100,000 is the period. And the bomb is 2 raised to the period. So just looking at some numbers here. So this calculation becomes the difficulty of the current block is the difficulty of the previous block plus this adjustment, plus 2 raised to whatever period we're in. So just looking at some numbers, back at block 1 million, the real block was 1 million. There was no offset, so the fake block was 1 million. Period 10, and the additional part from the bomb was only 1,024. The difficulty calculation is in the trillions, so this has absolutely no effect whatsoever on the difficulty. But by the time you get up to block 4.2 million, we're in period 42. Now we're adding an additional value of in the trillions. So now the bomb is starting to dominate the calculation. And that's exactly what the bomb is supposed to do. It's supposed to slow the chain down. And the reason is to force a hard fork. We want to force a hard fork. And the chain, if we don't fix the bomb, the chain will come to a halt over time because this number gets astronomically large. So what happened for the Byzantium hard fork is we set the offset to 3 million, which set the fake block to 1.3, which set the period to 13, and we're back down to 1,000 for the additional portion added by the block. And I'm just going to skip ahead here to the Muir Glacier. Well, we also set back an additional 2 million blocks for Constantinople, but we didn't set it as far back as we did for Byzantium, and we only went back to period 22, and you can see that we were in the millions already by the time we reset this. So by the time we got to Istanbul, we were already at period 40, but they didn't reset the offset. And that's why 6 weeks later, we had to do Muir Glacier because we had to reset the calculation. And at that time, they set it all the way back to period 2. So we're very far away from the bomb going off, and that's why it hasn't gone off for like a year and a half. So what it turns out to be true is that the only thing really of interest is setting back the period. So you can see here, we didn't set it back very far. Here we set it back very far. So then we had a Berlin hard fork in May, and they didn't set it back because we were only at period 32. We set it back in London a little bit, about 4 periods. And now we're up to block 40 or period 40, and we're going to set it back to period 30. And now we can look forward to when the merge happens. So we've basically, by setting it to 10.7 million offset, we're setting the fake block to 3 million, which means period 30, and we're now in the billions of additional difficulty per block. You have to get up into the the 2 billions or the 4 billions before it starts becoming really apparent. Now there is a function of hashing involved here too, but the difficulty calculation never allows the block to go slower really than 13 seconds. And additional hashing only makes it more easy to get back to 13 seconds. So more hashing is important, but only once the bomb really starts taking effect. So we can kind of ignore it in our prediction. So this is just a chart of showing the real block number here. And then the fake block, this is where we offset the fake block back. And you can kind of see the slowing down of the blocks in the curvature of the line here, because it is definitely slowing down. But then it goes back, and you can see this line, which is now the periods are these blue steps. So each 100,000 blocks, we go up 1 step. And you can see that the bomb is starting to take its effect. And this line right here, I call the line of no return or something like that, which is where we as a community better start thinking about resetting the bomb once it starts getting past this gray dashed line here. And so for London in the summer, we were well within the range of when it starts affecting it. And now we're a little bit further along, but we're still well within the range. So it's a good time to set it back now. And here's these two forks, right? These are 2 forks right here, one after another. That's where we kind of misunderstood where we should have set it back. So, and this also shows up in this chart. and you can see that the bomb kind of takes its effect. And then as soon as we set it back, this yellow line is the difficulty. As soon as we set it back, the difficulty drops immediately. And that's true here. And you can see that we're actually the hashing rate is growing, and that's why the difficulty is growing, because it's trying to keep this line as flat as it can be. And then here I'm just kind of laying all the hard forks on top of each other, and I'm just seeing, you can see the effect of more hash power here is that the time between blocks recovers more quickly, even though the difficulty is way higher, and that's because the hashing rate's way higher. So that's kind of just an explanation of how I figured out where I think the thing's going to happen. But I wanted to spend 2 minutes and just talk about, like, why is the bomb even there, and what is the purpose of the bomb, and why was it put in originally, and all that. So I think there's basically 3 things that people would argue. One would be that it's part of the monetary policy of the chain, that because the block time slows down, the number of new blocks per period slows down, which means the issuance per period slows down. And then people use that argument to say we should change the number of the number of ether rewarded. And this was used at least 3 times in the history of Ethereum chain. When the difficulty bomb was adjusted, we also adjusted the ether per block. And I actually think that was a big mistake, because first of all, it encourages this thought that monetary policy and bomb have something to do with each other. And secondly, it gives people outside of Ethereum an argument for why our monetary policy is sort of arbitrary. And I think that was a mistake on the part of the core devs. Another reason for it is as a forcing function, and this was right in from the very beginning when Vitalik started writing about the difficulty bomb, a forcing function for POW to POS. And if you think about this change from the perspective of a miner, there's almost not a single miner in the world who would upgrade to POS, because their business literally goes away. They don't have a business if there's no POW, if they're mining POW chain. So this difficulty bomb destroys the old chain, which means that if the miners don't upgrade their software on their machines, they'll lose out. They'll be cut off from the chain. So it was I think a really brilliant idea as a forcing function it basically takes the power of the decision making away from the miners and puts it in the hands of the core devs. But I actually think that's a problem as well. And another reason why the difficulty bomb was put in my opinion, was because of back in the day, there was this huge argument in Bitcoin about the size of a block. And the community, the Bitcoin community, had no say in whether or not that got changed in the code, because the core devs had complete control over the source code. And they didn't have to change anything. So another thing that the difficulty bomb does, it gives the community a forcing function against the core devs, because the core devs have to upgrade the software or the chain will stop. And that gives the community a chance to change its mind about who the core devs should be every year. So I think that's a really important part of the existence of the bomb. And I think people miss that sometimes, because people will mostly say it's a reason to shift to proof of stake. But I want to ask the question, like, what if our core devs get captured by big data or by Google or by Microsoft, or they all get bought out or something like that? What is the community going to do? They're going to go with the core devs if there's not some way for them to force the core devs to do what they want. And the question really is, who has the power? Should the power be the miners? Should the power be the core devs? Or should it actually be the community? And I think it should definitely be the community. And for that reason, I'm asking the question, should there be a difficulty bomb in the POS code? I don't think that has any future of actually getting done, but I think we should actually have that conversation, because to me, that gives the community a way to force the devs to at least make one more upgrade to the software. So that's basically all I wanted to say. My name is Jay. I'm with TrueBlocks. You guys should check out TrueBlocks. It's an amazing piece of software, and we are decentralized at heart, and we love to have some people come and check out our project. Thanks.
Thank you. It was really a nice presentation. I mean, you already have answered most of the questions we had. I could never understand like why we missed to include difficulty bomb in Istanbul and why we have to go for Muir Glacier, because historically difficulty bomb was a part of earlier upgrades. I mean, the overall presentation was really great.
Good.
Yeah, I know there are still some questions. So first I would like to open the floor for participants of the call. If they have any question, please go.
I actually wanted to start from the end, if I could, about what you were saying about the about the bomb being kind of a coordination mechanism for the community around core devs. But let's say that somehow Google bribed all the core devs tomorrow. And at the end of the day, they're still really the only people with the expertise to modify the clients to actually push off the bomb. No, like how would that look? Like the community kind of forking away from the core devs, so to speak.
Well, I would say, first of all, for the difficulty bomb itself, that's not really true. The line, it's literally, no exaggeration, one line of code to change to diffuse the bomb. So just for the difficulty bomb itself, that's not really true. Anyone can, you know, if we could fork the Geth code and change that one line, we could continue on with that chain. So it's more like an opportunity. It's more like an opportunity for the community to re-engage with the core devs. It forces the core devs to do something.
It's almost like a re-election. We know something is going to happen. We know software is going to be changed, and we're going to have to upgrade the nodes. So now it's our chance to sit and think, like, is this the direction we want to be going in?
Yeah, it's not a super powerful position to be in, because you are kind of at the, you know, the whim of the core devs. But if there definitely is going to be a change to the software, it's not inconceivable that you could find other core devs. And I like the fact also that we have multiple different clients, and it forces the core devs to coordinate among themselves to make sure that they're on the same page and in the same chat rooms, and all getting the upgrades done on their own version of the client at the same time. So it diffuses the power of the core devs of Bitcoin, because there's only one repo. At least there's multiple repos in Ethereum, because there's multiple clients. So that's another good thing. But if we remove that, you know, not clear to me what we're removing and whether we're actually removing, you know, I think it's important that we think about why we're removing the difficulty bomb. Now, if you look at it from the perspective of the miners, they're happy as hell that it's gone. And the core devs are happy that it's gone, because they're doing a hard fork tomorrow that has no purpose other than to diffuse this bomb. So it seems kind of silly for them to be doing this, but I think it's important, actually.
What about the bomb as a of preventing ossification? I think you kind of touched on this when you referred to the Bitcoin block size debates, but one of the other things I've heard people mention is that without the bomb, it becomes a little bit easy to get complacent and not merge in new EIPs.
That's right. That's definitely true. It's like, you know, if we're going to fix the bomb anyway, we might as well fix this other thing while we're at it. We might as well fix this other thing. So it's like a forcing function to actually do something once a year or something like that.
So I'm just wondering, you said that it's probably not going to happen with proof of stake, and I'm curious why you think that.
Well, I think that a lot of people think that the reason for the difficulty bomb was to force miners, without the difficulty bomb, the miners could simply refuse to upgrade their software. And there would be no downside to the miners, so that the proof of work chain would continue to work. Whereas with the bomb, the proof of work chain is going to die. So it kind of takes away the power away from the miners. And the reason they wanted to do that is because they want to be able to switch to proof of stake. And if you think about the proof of stake from the perspective of a miner, they're not interested in that at all, because they lose their business. Their business is proof of work. So a lot of people, I think, would say that the difficulty bomb was only a way to force proof of stake to get switched to. And I think that the core devs kind of look at the difficulty bomb as just a pain in the butt for no real good reason. And they don't think about it from the perspective of the community that says that, I think what the difficulty bomb is, it's a promise from the core devs to the community that they will upgrade at least one more time. And I don't think that the core devs feel like they need to make that promise, because they're going to do that anyway. But I like to look in the future and think about Google sitting over there wanting to capture the entire chain for themselves. So I want that in there. But I don't know enough core devs to actually say what I just said with any confidence, but I have a feeling. Did that answer your question?
So won't they ignore the next chain? If the reason that miners would ignore the chain is because of the fact that proof of work is gone, then wouldn't moving to proof of stake kind of do that anyway? So I guess my question is, how is it necessarily relevant to the inclusion or exclusion of the difficulty bomb in proof of stake, if regardless, the ability to earn money from it for miners is the same?
I'm not sure I understand your question. Are you asking why I think it's necessary to have proof of, or a difficulty or some kind of forcing function inside of proof of stake? Is that what you're asking?
More so just, are miners able, because you were saying that miners switching to proof of stake, or that they wouldn't want to do that because of the fact that they would lose their business. And so I'm wondering, in general, if that's relevant to whether or not the difficulty bomb be included into proof of stake.
No, I'm more saying that if we were to include something like a difficulty bomb in proof of stake, what we would be doing is the community would be extracting a promise from the core devs. We've already eliminated the miners with proof of stake, because they don't really have they don't have a say in anything really in proof of stake. So I'm saying that the community wants to have a forcing function against the core devs so that they don't become incalcitrant or captured or working against the community's interest, which it's not clear to me that that's not going to happen, because we've seen it already happen in Bitcoin, for example. I mean, if you believe one side or the other of that argument. But I think by putting something in that's like a forcing function to upgrade the software in the future, you're giving the community an opportunity to express its desires, which they won't have if there's no forcing function on the core devs, I think. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
And I think, what I'm saying is probably not what a lot of people would say. I kind of don't hear people say what I'm saying all that often, but it just feels to me like that's the real important part about this difficulty bomb is the communities. It gives the community some power. It's a tiny little bit of power. It's not very much power, but it's more than zero.
So maybe just to dig into that again, if I could, and kind of maybe to lead the conversation into decentralization in general. So I remember when I was first getting into the space, this was something that kind of worried me, which is any significantly complex code base or significantly large code base, especially one that was created by a team in the first place, gets to be kind of inscrutable. When you have something the size of the Ethereum client, especially one of the Ethereum clients that has a lot of other functionality. I mean, I believe that Geth still ships with both a Whisper and a Swarm module in it, but I think they're taking it out. It gets very, very difficult to audit. And it made me wonder, for all of the talk of development in the open and decentralization, if Google did really corrupt a bunch of core devs or anything of that general kind of apocalypse scenario, can any of us actually even tell?
I think all of us are responsible to make sure that we can tell. Yes, I think we have to be responsible to make sure that we can tell. I think
How do we do it though? I agree that we need
I don't know,
to be
the community, I don't know,
responsible. I'm
maybe
just not sure
the community coalesces around a group of people who are not the core devs, who literally watch the code, and they're paid to watch the code on behalf of the community, or something. But I think it's really important, because I think that it will absolutely get corrupted. I think there's zero chance that it won't get corrupted, because just think about it. It's the world's economic platform, and it's not going to get corrupted. What planet would that ever happen on? I don't know any planet that would happen on. Seems to me it's absolutely going to be corrupted. And I think we need to engineer that into our expectation and make sure that we're diligently watching these things, because otherwise we're going to have a really bad situation on our hands. That's my prediction. But so I mean, I kind of agree with you that it's not an easy task, but I think it's more and more and more important as time goes on, I think.
And I guess the question is, like, looking at decentralization, me personally, I'm more on the application layer, and there where I see it a lot is you want to give users a really good UX, but at the same time you actually want things to be decentralized, but oftentimes you can streamline them a lot more. I think it was Benjamin Franklin once said about democracy that there's no one who wouldn't sell democracy for a hot meal.
That's
and
right.
For us, I wonder if there's any user who wouldn't sacrifice decentralization for just another 1 second less latency.
I know. Yeah. I always tell people what we want to get to eventually is you can't buy a computer that doesn't have a node running on that computer. And I tell people that computers in the future are going to have 100 terabyte hard drives, and 99.9 terabytes are going to be for the blockchain data, and nobody will care.
If it's the norm, it's the norm. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like to think that it's just going to happen magically is probably not a good way to plan for that. It has to happen on purpose.
So you're really digging in here to the BOM as a form of coordination, as something that just creates a natural kind of incentive loop that has decentralization kind of built into it. Do you see any other kind of protocol layer incentive loops that you think really need to either be talked about in order to make them more decentralized, or the natural decentralization?
Well, my work on TrueBlocks has always been about access to the data as well, and I think that is it's kind of outside of the blockchain, because accessing the data is a function that people do outside of the chain. I mean, people write smart contracts which need access to the data inside the chain, but we really need access to the data outside the chain as well. And that, to me, is wildly centralized. And I think that there's a whole lot of things that we should be paying attention to there, as far as how do we ensure that access to the data off chain is not centralized, because that I see as a much easier thing actually to do than centralizing the chain. And everything I see is leading directly towards that. I mean, notwithstanding the 10 different solutions that people are proposing, including my own. But that's probably the most important thing I see, or at least from my perspective.
So looking at back at the difficulty bomb for a second, if you don't mind, William, can I? Sorry.
Sure.
Okay.
Do you mind if I keep on that thread for a bit and then let you take a question after that?
Yeah, sure. That's fine.
All right, cool. I was just going to ask what you're referring to there with data availability is due to the difficulties of running an archive node, like specifically. I mean, theoretically, if we were all running archive nodes, we'd be able to query off, like, the entire state of the chain from Genesis locally, but most of us can't really run archive nodes.
Well, actually, you guys should all switch to Aragon. I'm just making a plug for Aragon there. They're pretty. It's not hard. It's 2 terabytes big, so it's much better than 12 terabytes big. But there's actually proposals now to drop historical data and different ways of accessing that historical data. So it's an increasingly important question as well.
Mm-hmm. So I also like you're talking about Ethereum initiatives, yeah, that like we wouldn't all. Sorry about that. Zoom's last update has really wrecked me. You're referring to how. So you're referring to the stateless Ethereum initiatives where like we wouldn't have to all have all the data locally in order to be able to query it from the network.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, Lita, why don't you go for it?
Sure. So I'm just wondering, what would be your proposed implementation of the bomb in proof of stake? Like, because in proof of work, right, you have the increasing of the difficulty. What would proof of stake be?
Yeah, I have no idea. I don't know.
Well, I think here, like,
do you? Oh, sorry. Do you have any suggestions, Alita?
No.
Yeah.
Difficulty's going away, so it couldn't be difficulty anymore. There would
right.
actually have to be something put in that would literally delay
it's
when
not,
people were able
it's
to
not,
make that
it's not that hard, actually. It's maybe a lot easier because like there's going to be a piece of code that says the new block is due in 12 seconds, and you could add a line of code in there that says 12 seconds plus, 2 raised to the power of a fake block or something, and it's in the code. It's a choice of the core developers to put that line of code into the code. It's not like some magical formula. It's just that the core developers have to put it in, and it just slows the chain down over time unless they fork. Yeah, that's the same exact thing that the current difficulty bomb is. You could remove the bomb literally with a 1-line change to the code. So
I mean, if you think about it, every epoch is composed of slots on the beacon chain. Basically, all you would need to do is either bump the amount of time per epoch or the amount of time per slot.
That's right. And that's a choice made by the developers, I think, as a promise to the community that they're going to make at least one more fork.
Well, I think the core idea of POS, moving into POS, is to get rid of the POW consensus mechanism. Maybe because of that, we have not considered, the core dev may not have considered putting difficulty bomb over there. But as you mentioned in like one of your slides, that when this difficulty bomb is not there, the block time will be fixed. That is an advantage, that we would be getting accurate timing of producing block. I mean, everything has a trade-off. That may be the trade-off here that we are dealing with.
Right.
I have a couple of more questions for you related to proposal. I understand you mentioned about the merge. Like, we know that the difficulty bomb would not be there, and there are high chances of this to being the last, the Arrow Glacier being the last difficulty bomb related upgrade. It's a hypothetical situation. I'm just trying to, I'm curious and I'm just trying to understand here. Recently, we came across the proposal 4488, transaction call data gas cost. And devs are discussing the possibility of getting another upgrade before the merge. It's not decided, it is still under discussion, but I'm wondering, the change, the push of the difficulty bomb that was done with this EIP-4345, that was based on the estimate that merge would be by then. If by any chance with this new upgrade in light, we get to merge to push a little bit more, do you think we would be looking for another emergency upgrade for pushing the difficulty bomb?
No, because I think that, you know, a lot of the stuff that I've been trying to do ever since the problem with I forget the name of those Istanbul, where we didn't do it, right? I've been like, I wrote a bunch of code to kind of watch the difficulty and keep track of where we are in the period. And if you keep track of the period, you're pretty, if you change it before period 42, kind of, it's not going to be a problem. So, and you just have to know what period you're in, which is basically the block number minus the offset. And now you know that you better get your, you know, I don't think it's going to sneak up on us again, I think is what I'm saying.
That's good to know. I mean, it's quite relaxing that we do not have to have another emergency upgrade before we get into merge, because people are eagerly waiting for merge.
Having said that, I've been known to make mistakes in my life. First of all, I'll just say it that way. And secondly, you know, it may be that I think that the bomb never comes earlier than you expect it to come, because the bombs never get faster. They never go much below 13 seconds on average. They only really get slower because the only thing that happens is the bomb adds to the difficulty. So they get slower, but not faster. So it doesn't really come early. The reason it came early is because we set it back incorrectly. But now we're kind of saying, we know exactly how far we set it back. We know exactly how long it's going to take. So it doesn't come early is one good thing. But I don't think, I didn't realize that people were talking about another hard fork before the merge. I didn't hear that.
I mean, there is nothing set in stone yet. I think most likely the decision will be in the upcoming all core dev all core dev meeting. But because of this high gas price, there was this proposal 4488 Vitalik proposed just last core dev meeting. Hopefully we'll be able to hear the decision in the next Friday meeting. There is one more question. I'm not sure if I read it correctly. In one of your presentations, I think I saw that the period was also adjusted in London. I do not remember any difficulty bomb proposal going in. So is it something that is not related with a proposal and it can be done on the client side independent of that?
I think there must have been a proposal. I do know that there was a setback of the offset in London. London was the one in the summer, is that right?
August, yes.
Yeah, there was an offset to set it back to December. And that's why we're here now.
Right,
But,
I just
but
remember.
I don't remember.
Yes.
I don't remember if there was an EIP or not. There must have been.
I think I remember the conversation of pushing it, but it's just that maybe I'm missing on the number of EIP.
No,
which
I'm not
was
sure.
there.
I'm not sure.
Mhm. But that was really interesting fact that with this discussion, with this calculation that you have showed over a period of time, how difficulty bomb was calculated, we actually figured out and key factor which actually decides how we can adjust the pushing of the bomb. That's is like really very important question for core developer, the client developer. But again, these suggestions, those are coming up from researchers like you. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. It's fun. I like doing it. You know why? Because here's why, because it's the mathematics is just at my level. If I had to go any further into mathematics, I couldn't do it. So this is like right at my edge.
Right. It's fun. I mean, the maths that you have shown, I loved it. I may not have understood it completely, but I definitely love that.
Yeah, I love it too.
I have one more question related to EIP, but it's not directly writing into EIP. It's about the process part. Like I'm wondering if EIP 4345 your first proposal.
Yes.
All right. So I'll be curious to hear from you, like your thoughts on the experience of documenting this as an author, or if you have any improvement suggestion to the present EIP standardization process.
Yeah, well, actually, Tim Biko, I believe is his last name. He did all the work. I didn't do anything, and he just put my name on it because I did the calculation behind it. And it was a very short EIP, so I think it wasn't too hard to do. I've looked at a lot of EIPs in my life, and one of the reasons why I've never done one before is because I don't have that much energy to do that much work. So,
Well, not a problem. I mean, your work on the research part also has helped us a lot, because now we know that the developers have better insight of when we can expect the difficulty bound.
right.
All right, I think I'm done with all the questions here, and we are almost close to the time. Just final call for anyone on the call if you have any questions. No worries. No worries. It's all good. I mean, the presentation was awesome. The questions that we were actually looking for has already been answered in that. And just for other people who are watching this recording, we have also recorded an episode on difficulty bomb with James Hancock for the earlier upgrade. And it's interesting to learn about the proposal and how why the difficulty bomb is there in the first place. And here, TJ, I just remembered the proposal that went into the earlier upgrade when we did this episode with James Hancock.
Right. Yeah, he and I spent a whole weekend in Prague about 3 years ago, discovering the difficulty bomb together a little bit. So we had a great time learning that. He's much better at math than I am, I'll tell you that much.
Oh, he said all nice words about you and your help on the calculation part, and that's why I always wanted to have you on the show before the difficulty bomb things goes away from the Ethereum blockchain forever.
Right. Can I say something?
Yeah, of course. Please go ahead.
This is the best connection I've had to the Ethereum community directly. I'm just going to say, I love you, Ethereum community. You're the best group of people on the planet Earth. And I'm so excited to be part of the Ethereum community. I loved it ever since the first weekend that I fell into this rabbit hole. People were so nice to me. And I just didn't have any clue what was going on. And everybody was so giving and so sharing. And that's been true ever since. So, except for all the hackers, there's a lot of hackers. But...
Right. I agree.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I love today's conversation. Yeah, it was really interesting to learn what's going on in the back end with all the decisions those are made in front end by the core developers, the client teams. And as we are very close to the end of the talk, I would like to thank you once again, TJ, for sharing this presentation and talk about the difficulty bomb and EIP 4345, which I am assuming that will be deployed on the mainnet in less than just 24 hours.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I hope like most of the users who are running the Ethereum node at the moment must have upgraded their nodes and will be in sync with the network on the other side of the upgrade. And on this note, a huge thank you to all our YouTube viewers for watching PEEPanEIP. I'm hopeful the information shared in this episode will encourage many new users, especially the student groups, to join the most interesting blockchain and become a part of the Ethereum ecosystem. Please check out the description section for guest information and related resources link there. Sharing is caring. If you care about this proposal and care about the blockchain, please extend your support by sharing this video. And yes, do not forget to subscribe us. We'll be back with another interesting topic. Till then, keep watching, keep sharing your love with Ethereum Cathodists. See you soon.